So hello and welcome to the video, and welcome again to London's Heathrow Terminal 2. Quite excited today because I'm flying on an airline that is new to me, to a country that is new to me, via another country that is new to me. And to be specific, I'll be flying on Ethiopian Airlines from London down to Addis Ababa on their A350 product, and then after about 4 hours on the ground I'll be flying on their 737 across to Zanzibar in Tanzania, and as an added bonus we're scheduled for a quick stop in Kilimanjaro, which I believe will be very, very scenic. This will get me almost all of the way to gold on Star Alliance. I think I'll fall a teeny tiny bit short, but I have a strategy for bridging that gap when I get back. Now, we booked this flight in economy class, although once again I could not resist playing the bid to upgrade lottery, and once again I have won by having placed a minimum bid. So we will be travelling from London to Addis Ababa in their business class, and I say we because today I am travelling with someone, and I am travelling with my mate Steve. Say hi, Steve.
Hi Steve.
So if you'd like to see what the business class product on Ethiopian Airlines between here and Addis Ababa is like, stick around.
Hi, I'm Matt. Over the last 25 years I've travelled a lot. I've lived in 5 countries on 4 continents. I've flown over 1.3 million miles. I've visited over 100 countries, every American state, but I'm nowhere near done. So hit subscribe to see where I go next, and perhaps get some inspiration for your next trip. Heathrow was quite busy. It was really good to see, as was being able to transit the terminal without wearing a mask. A few people chose to still wear them, but as you can see, the vast majority were happy to conduct this part of their travel experience with the lower part of their faces exposed. Ethiopians' check-in is in Zone D. As my upgrade bid had hit, I was able to use the business class counter. Steve had been delayed, so I decided to check in and head to the lounge to wait for him there with a drink, rather than hanging around in the check-in area. My final destination was Tanzania, which had some quite strict entry requirements still in force, possibly the strictest of anywhere I'd been since travel reopened. And to be precise, I was flying to Zanzibar, which is an autonomous region of Tanzania. I'll make a couple of videos about what we found in Zanzibar, but I will say here that the island's autonomous status means it has different entry requirements than the Tanzanian mainland, which is quite annoying and is something to be aware of if you are planning a trip in the near future, as it is a nuance that is easy to miss. You also needed a visa, and I generally prefer to get them ahead of time where possible rather than on arrival, one less thing to worry about when arriving somewhere unfamiliar after a long trip. It ended up being quite a pile of documents, but Tennyson was on duty that evening and he was brilliant. With so many final destinations possible, particularly on an airline like Ethiopian, which has an extensive route network throughout Africa, checking people in and taking responsibility for ensuring they have the right documentation must be a complete nightmare for the check-in team, but Tennyson was unflappable and was very efficient.
Must be a nightmare for you.
I could also use the fast-track security lane, although once again the regular lane would have been quicker. Still didn't take long though. My business class ticket also gave me lounge access. I was invited to head to the Singapore Airlines lounge, which is in the B gate section of Terminal 2. The A gate section is quite compact and accessible, but it's a bit of a hike to the B gates, and it is a hike too, as there's moving walkways rather than a connecting train. Something to bear in mind if you have mobility issues. There's actually 4 Star Alliance lounges in Terminal 2. People talk about the lounge crawl that is possible with a One World Gold card in Terminal 3, but I think there's just as much fun to be had in Terminal 2 with a Star Alliance Gold card. A video idea for the future, I think. But I wasn't quite gold on this occasion, and I don't know whether my Ethiopian business class boarding pass would have gotten me into the Lufthansa or United lounges. The Air Canada lounge wasn't an option, as it currently closes in the early afternoon after their last flight departs. I'd not expected the Singapore Airlines lounge to be an option. I'd read a few different things online, but the Singapore Airlines site said that they were only allowing entry with a negative PCR test taken 2 days before travel. We had taken a test 3 days before travel to satisfy Zanzibar's requirements. but they'd obviously come to some arrangement as I was waved straight through after presenting my Ethiopian boarding pass. I used to live in Singapore, so it was very pleasant to be able to have a somewhat Singaporean experience for an hour or so before boarding. A decent space, not quite as nice or as spacious as I had perhaps expected, but the tiger beer was cold and tasted authentic, and the food was very tasty. Steve duly caught up, and before long it was time to head to the gate. Boarding was already well underway when we got there, but the business class boarding lane was still available and we were quickly through. At the time of travel, masks were not required in the terminal, but they were on the plane, so boarding was the first point of that entire day that I'd needed to wear a mask. I have to say that mask wearing on board was not stringently enforced. Left turn into the business cabin. Our upgrade had come through about 6 hours earlier, so we'd been lucky to both have been able to snag an inner window seat on this A350. Seat Guru shows all of Ethiopian's A350s as having a 2-2-2 configuration, and this particular configuration doesn't feature, but it's a staggered 1-2-1 configuration with each row offset to nestle under the seat in front. The window seats are either inner or outer, with the inner seats offering more privacy, and the middle block of seats are effectively pairs or singles, something to bear in mind if travelling with someone you actually want to speak to during the flight. I didn't film it, but the Ethiopian seat selection page in their website makes the configuration quite clear, so it is straightforward to select the seat you want. The seat itself is pretty good. It faces directly forward, which isn't that common in business class cabins like this, which means the structure in front of you is closer than can be the case on other planes, and the cubby into which your feet need to disappear is therefore deeper. More on that later. It also means that the screen is fixed directly in front of you, giving true gate-to-gate entertainment. It's a pretty large screen too. You get a decent seat width at the shoulder, and there's a strong reading light close by. There's a shoulder strap built into the seat, although we weren't required to use it, which was a little odd. Presumably it's there for a reason. Also at shoulder level is a substantial cupboard/cabinet which contains the amenity kit and a remote controller for the TV. Underneath that storage unit is a power socket with a USB port, plus there's more storage beside you where headphones are stored, and stuff will slide around a bit, but there's also some shelf space under the cupboard. Finally, a business seat with decent storage. The seats are aligned in such a way that you can see the passenger across the aisle if you lean forwards. There is a privacy screen, although you wouldn't describe it as enormous, but it does help. Overall though, the privacy on the inner window seat is pretty good. About the only criticism is that there are no overhead air vents, but it's a good seat. I had the opportunity to fly in business class on Ethiopian's 787 product a little later in this trip, which isn't so good, so look out for that review in the next few weeks. A pre-departure beverage was offered. Ethiopian pours each glass of champagne as ordered, which is a nice touch, even if it does slow things down a wee bit. No refills were offered, but we were a little late to board, so I'm not too bothered by that, and bang on time, we pushed back and took off. I said Ethiopian offers a bid for upgrade service. There's a buy now option, but you can choose a lower price and take your chances. We actually went in at 2 pips over the minimum bid, so £500 each. I'll reveal at the end of this video whether I felt that represented good value, but there were still a few empty seats in business class, so it doesn't look like the opportunity was that widely taken up. The amenity kit had the usual stuff in it. Quite a nicely designed bag though, with the attached hanger. Aviation trend prediction of the video time. I can't imagine this sort of kit will be around in a few years' time, as they are so environmentally unfriendly. Some airlines are starting to only make stuff available if you need it, rather than giving everyone everything, where almost all of it ends up in landfill. I do like a nice pair of flight socks though, and that white box contained toothpaste. The in-flight entertainment was pretty good too, a wide range of movies and a nice responsive screen. Close enough to reach from the seat, so I didn't actually use the remote. In the end, I didn't watch anything on this flight, so didn't test the quality of the provided headphones. I did play a pool game though, as you'll see a bit later on, and I was rubbish at it. It was a 9 PM takeoff with around a 7-hour flight time, so the crew worked hard to complete service quickly to maximise the time available for rest. The table comes out from under the TV, but is quite substantial and adjustable. You can also pivot it so you can exit the seat with the tray deployed, which isn't always possible in business seats, which are considered premium to Ethiopia's offering, another strong positive to this seat's design. A tablecloth was laid out, but there were no menus given out. I didn't hear it explained, but I worked out that you could see a menu by accessing the plane's Wi-Fi, finding an in-flight site using a QR code that you could find through your TV screen, and then entering your flight number. Quite a faff, and I would expect very few people to have figured it out, but if you did, it allowed you to review the menu at your leisure and make an educated choice. The attendant offered chicken, beef or fish, which captured the essence of each dish but didn't really do them justice. A gin and tonic for me to get things rolling. More of a gin martini as it turned out, but it did the trick. And the table was laid. So nice to have this sort of service back on a plane after 2 years of having to just catch a tray lobbed at you by the attendant. For my main I had the veal steak, accompanied by a South African red wine, as well as a slice of mild turbulence. And it was absolutely superb. Your taste buds lose about 30% of their perceptiveness on a plane, so food needs to be over-seasoned to compensate. This dish was extremely tasty, even with the taste bud handicap, so probably would have been inedible on the ground. I complimented the crew for the food and they offered me another one, but I declined as I was keen on getting some sleep. But not before I enjoyed some excellent cheese and a glass of port. I really was rubbish at that pool game. Dinner done and time for some shut-eye. The seat quickly converts into a flat bed and you can remain seated through the process. As I mentioned, the footwell is quite deep and fairly narrow, but it's reasonably tall. I'm 6'4" and was just about able to stretch out flat, although my head and feet were both pressed against the ends of the seat. It was much more comfortable on my side. The bedding kit included a pretty thick mattress topper, a duvet and a fairly substantial pillow. These were in the Ethiopian Airlines brand colours, which you may not pick for your own bedroom, but it was a high quality set. I got about 3.5 hours of decent sleep. Not enough, but that's about all you can expect if you choose to eat and sleep on such a short flight. As an African dawned, it was lights on and table out for breakfast. I'd describe the breakfast as having tasted a lot better than it looked. A quick loo stop, a couple of elaborations to enhance your business class experience, but basically it was an airplane toilet. Very clean though, which is what you want to see towards the end of a flight. Our plane was less than a year old and I am bewildered as to why they are still being built with ashtrays in the toilet. Ethiopia was a new country for me, but it was also a new corner of the planet too. Not entirely sure what I expected to see, but Addis Ababa looked perfectly pleasant as we descended into the airport. I'd normally have tried to sneak a cheeky 24-hour stopover into a trip like this, but Ethiopia's prevailing quarantine restrictions made that impossible on this occasion. There's also been some recent conflict in Ethiopia, but it is a place I look forward to returning to and exploring in more detail. Slightly annoying that we stopped at a remote stand, but it meant I was able to walk on Ethiopian soil and breathe Ethiopian air, which makes it a little easier for me to add Ethiopia to my list of countries visited. Very early on in this channel's history, I made some videos about country counts, so for anyone who's been around from the start of the channel, Ethiopia is the 95th UN member country I've visited, it's Travellers Century Club territory number 130, and it's number 113 on Matt's country list. If you'd like to know more about what all of that means, check out this ancient relic from the early days of the channel. Ethiopian offered a dedicated business class bus and policed access fairly well, so before long we were at the terminal and heading for the transfer security counters. So what did I think of Ethiopian Airlines A350 business class, and was it worth the £500 upgrade? We'd already paid about £750 for the economy class ticket through to Zanzibar, meaning this leg had already cost around 290 quid. I enjoyed the flight. The seat was very good, the food was very good, and the service was also very good. I got a decent sleep, and I really enjoyed the conveniences my business class ticket added to the ground experience, particularly the opportunity to have a brief flashback to my time in Singapore in the lounge. But overall, I'm not certain it was worth it. The flight ended up costing over £100 an hour, which is a lot more than I would normally pay. My recent flights on Virgin cost around half that as a benchmark. But I'm happy to have experienced Ethiopian's business class on its flagship plane, and would certainly fly it again if I was able to access it at a more reasonable price. We chose not to bid for an upgrade for the return flight, even though the minimum offer requested was £100 lower, and that probably tells you all you need to know. I'll review our economy class experience back to London in a couple of weeks. So thanks for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please leave me a comment, would you fly with Ethiopian? And if you're new, please subscribe. And if you'd like to support what I'm doing here on the channel, I've set up a Patreon account, the link to which you can find in the description below. So thanks again, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.